Welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon, the podcast, where we dive deep into all things health and wellness to help you find health and healing inside and out for now and forever. Hello and welcome to Trifecta Collective, Finding the Root with Megan and Shannon. I am Megan Abbott, owner and founder of the holistic health practice Trifecta Collective, and this is my co-host and head practitioner, Shannon Callery. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how's it going today?
Yeah, it is going. It's a busy week. It was a chemo week, so it's, I feel like there's like two very distinct time frames in my life right now. It's like chemo weeks and non-chemo weeks, so they're like
Yeah,
very distinctly different. But not terrible. Definitely still not as bad as the first round. So not
good.
great, but not as bad as that first round. So holding on tight to that here.
Yeah.
Before we dive into, so this will have been announced by the time this podcast comes out, because we do record a little bit early. This will be announced on social media, but I'm also going to announce it here. We are doing another masterclass that will be completely free. The goal is to keep it at 2 hours or under. I had a hard time with the gut one at 2 hours. And the topic that we're doing now is a big topic. And so, yeah, we're working on making sure it stays at 2 hours, hopefully right at that 2 hour mark, and still get through all the content that I want to get through. So this free masterclass is going to be on Tuesday, May 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Once again, it is free. However, you do have to register for it. So make sure you click on the link. We'll have the link in the show notes here. So just make sure you sign up. If you can't attend live, there will be a recording. And the big reveal, what is the topic going to be? It is mold, mast cell, and histamines. Yeah, the histamine stuff is so big right now. Like mast cell stuff is continuing to get bigger and bigger. And these are both symptoms of bigger things going on. And the most common root cause is mold, which obviously we've talked about here on the podcast. And I'm sure we'll throw it in our topic today again, too, because we do see this being a really big root cause for a lot of people with autoimmunity and autoimmune diseases. So yeah, I'm super, super excited. We already started putting everything together. Once again, we're trying to keep it as in that 2 hour time frame, but there's a lot to go over. So if you have ever been curious, if you've got like histamine symptoms, if you think you have mast cell issues, if you've heard us talk about mold and all the stuff that can be related to mold, I'm going to answer so many questions that you have on all of this and how it's also interconnected. What to look for, how to test, better testing options, not so good testing options, and where a lot of people in even the holistic health space get a lot of this stuff wrong. So, and then how to heal. So we're going to dive into all of that. It's going to be super, super good. So once again, like make sure you go sign up, whether you can attend live. I will be answering questions if you attend live. So there is that huge benefit there. And then if you can attend live, make sure, once again, you still have to sign up to be able to get the recording. I know we did make the other masterclass free after the fact. Because of the in-depth nature of this one, I suspect we will not keep this one free. So it is free for right now. It is free for the live, free for the recording, and probably not after that, if I had to guess. Haven't super decided either way, but if I had to guess, probably not. So make sure you go sign up for that. It's going to be awesome, super, super good, and I'm super excited for this. So be sure to go register. Which, into our topic today, autoimmunity, autoimmune diseases, is what we're going to be talking about today. And once again, we have some personal experiences with that. I was diagnosed with Hashimoto's disease many years ago and have reversed, put in remission. Some people are very particular about the verbiage they like to use, being like, you can't reverse autoimmune diseases. For me, reversing is the verbiage that I prefer to use. While I do understand that there's some things underlying in my body, and it could come back. I do like to say I have reversed it, and I have had no visible signs as far as like actual symptoms popping up, and lab work has shown that. So we're going to talk about autoimmunity just in general today.
Yeah, and this is something that comes through a lot for us, especially through consults and even the current clients that we have right now. We'll dive into more specific types and what that looks like and all the things, but over the last like couple months, this has just been a topic that has been coming up so much. Some specific things about diagnosis that like aren't super accurate that we're going to talk about today. It's been driving me crazy just because I keep hearing about it. I don't know. It's like a weird thing right now. Misdiagnosing autoimmunity, pretty much. But the main thing that we want to start with here is in in Western medicine, autoimmunity is kind of looked at as this one specific thing where for us, we're looking at it as a spectrum. So we don't just wake up one day and we have Graves' disease or lupus or Hashimoto's. Like, that is not how it works. These things build in the body over time, and there are signs that we can see and different imbalances that we can see to let us know, kind of like red flags, that we're heading in a not so great direction. So really, like, when we're talking about autoimmunity, we fully believe that it is a spectrum and that there are certain things we can look for throughout the time frame of your life to try and help prevent from some of these things. And a good example of this is like, say that you're a person who has like chronic GI issues, constipation issues, maybe you've had like a lot of trauma stuff happen in your life. Like, these things build over time. Again, you're not just like, we're not talking about you ate food that didn't agree with you and you get constipated from it. Like, that's not really a chronic issue. But when we've had these little things like GI symptoms and mental health issues that have been slowly building over time, these are all a piece of the puzzle when it comes to the spectrum of autoimmunity.
Yeah, and to like dive deeper into like the Western medicine side here too, because obviously I went through this as well.
Yeah.
And there was a statistic. I don't know how accurate this is still. I would assume it's probably still pretty close to it. But I remember seeing a statistic several years ago saying that it takes anywhere between 8 to 10 different physicians for someone to get officially diagnosed with an autoimmune disease. And once again, like I fortunately I went to less than that. And it was also a struggle. For me, like I had all kinds of thyroid dysfunction symptoms coming up, and I begged, and that is not an exaggeration. I begged my primary care doctor. I was like, "Can you please test my thyroid? Like, I think there is something going on with it. Like, can you please do some testing?" And she completely refused. Like, wouldn't even run like TSH, free T4, which are like usually you can get at least TSH run by someone. But yeah, she refused to do it for me. And it wasn't until I did go to a functional medicine practitioner. They ran a full thyroid panel without the antibodies, so just by the way. And so I was
Hmm.
diagnosed hypothyroidism with hypothyroidism first. And then a few months later, I was then tested for my antibodies, and my TPO antibodies in particular were through the roof, which is how it was diagnosed. The other thing that I think is really important to understand, like from our perspective in autoimmunity, like 100% it's a spectrum, and you can't typically get diagnosed by Western medicine until it's like full blown, until something is being attacked, and then they can give you some sort of medication to symptom manage whatever is being attacked. And so I think if we like roll that back a little bit and understanding what even is autoimmunity, like what is an autoimmune disease, there is something or some things, and we'll spend the vast majority of the episode talking about that is now triggering your immune system. So the important piece here is something or some things are triggering your immune system, and your immune system now is attacking a part of your body. And what the way Western medicine does, it's like, okay, well, your thyroid's being attacked. So, like, for example, Hashimoto's, or Graves, for that matter, like your thyroid's being attacked. So let's give you levothyroxine, Synthroid, if you're super lucky, like MP thyroid, because that's what's being attacked. But we're missing the bigger picture here of like it's not the thyroid that's the problem. It's not like your gut that's the problem, and there's thousands of autoimmune diseases just by the way. Many of like some of which don't even have names. And it's like, okay, well, let's symptom manage the thyroid, but like the thyroid's not really the issue. The thyroid is what's coming under attack. Not that the thyroid doesn't need love, but if we look at the bigger question, once again, like, okay, but why? Like, why is the immune system responding this way? And it's not really the thyroid that's the issue itself. It's really the immune system that is then starting to attack something within the body. And the question is, why is the immune system doing this? Because it's not supposed to do that.
Yeah. And that's where we get into some of this like root cause issues that we want to discover. It is helpful to have, to actually see the testing, these certain antibody markers and see like are they positive? Are you not there yet? Like where are you at on the spectrum? But ultimately, if it's not, if it is, like we still need to dive deeper and figure out like what's going on other underneath that started this to happen in the first place. And this is where all the things that we normally talk about come into play. So like, are you being exposed to mold? Have you been exposed to mold? What toxins are in your body? Heavy metals, parasites. Sometimes Epstein-Barr virus or maybe even other viruses can spark some of this stuff as well, because it's anything that's causing like a mass amount of stress on your symptom or on your system is going to essentially throw your body out of balance when it's already like not in the right place. And then we can kind of talk about the nervous system trauma, generational trauma piece as well. Like if that is something that you have dealt with, I don't necessarily think that's a full root cause issue, but we do often see it coupled and tied in with all of these other things going on. So bottom line is there's something else going on underneath it, and that's where we want to start to do our digging and say like, okay, what needs to be changed, what needs to be detoxed and addressed, like what lifestyle habits need to shift, because there's so many moving parts underneath this.
Yeah, and EBV is a really particular one. So, EBV is known, Epstein-Barr virus is known to trigger thyroid autoimmune diseases. There is a very strong connection correlation there. I was diagnosed with chronic Epstein-Barr virus. I was also diagnosed with cytomegalovirus, and I was treated for that. And go back and listen to our chronic viral episode because we dig deeper into that. Because I do think, once again, I have changed my mind on this from my original stance. But it really is, once again, like, okay, almost all of us have viruses that are dormant in our body. And the question is, okay, but what triggered? Why is the body not able to keep them dormant? What is going on? And why is this happening? We're also seeing, just because this is relevant and we do see this quite often, you know, COVID, we are seeing be a trigger to Epstein-Barr virus, which if, then we can kind of break it down like, okay, well, if COVID it can trigger Epstein-Barr virus in certain people, well, then the EBV can trigger thyroid autoimmune disease, and potentially other autoimmune diseases. There's just a very strong correlation between those two things in particular. Okay, but once again, like what is going on with the immune system? What is going on in the body, and why is this happening? I also want to address the genetic component here because I think this is super important because people are like, oh, like everyone in my family has autoimmune diseases, and so I'm going to get it. Maybe, maybe, if you follow similar lifestyles and trauma patterns, yeah, for sure. I'll also say, like, because I thought the same thing of like, okay, well, who in my family has autoimmune diseases? I could think of one relative who was diagnosed with celiac disease, and it is a very distant cousin, like not a close relative, no one that I know, like no one in my immediate family, no one in like even like one layer outside of that, like no one has been at least diagnosed with autoimmune disease. Now, there are plenty of other problems, in that immediate family, including addiction issues, which question mark, like, did that ever cover up autoimmune diseases in my immediate family? Potentially. But genes can turn on and off. And so, like for me personally, when I look back at my lab work, in my early 20s, and for me, it was a car accident. That was my trigger. And we'll also talk about that here too. Um, I mean, the signs were there. I had parasite patterns. My liver enzymes were already a hot mess. My cholesterol was all over the place, which it can be an indication, and it was for me of heavy metal overload, heavy metal toxicity, and then parasites were already there. Plus, you couple like the trauma background that I have, like, of course, one little incident, like a minor car accident, of course, that would trigger autoimmunity in me. Like, it would explain, like, for me, I can trace it back, and I'm like, yeah, of course that happened. Um, and there's just a lot of education that can come around this. And okay, well, what if you don't want to do meds? If you do want to address the root causes, what does this actually look like?
Yeah, and one more thing to add to that before we talked about like the symptom management with the meds and all that is I do think it's important that we start to look at this generational trauma piece a little bit more. And I know it's becoming a thing and people are getting it. And I love seeing that because it does play a role here. I mean, I can't tell you how many people I've spoke with who say exactly what you just said. Well, my mom had it and or like my grandma had it and just like brush over it like, oh, it's nothing, like they had it so I'm going to have it as well. When we look at this like generational trauma piece, like if your grandparents went through something and it looks so different per person, and but these events, whatever it may be, can shape and change you a certain way, and then your mom is raising you and you're raising your kids, and like these things get passed down and they affect us. If there's huge traumas that are left unresolved and unworked out, which for most of the generations before us, that's like a fairly common thing because it was heavily looked down upon to even get into some of this stuff. And it does play a role because it's causing a stress on your body and it's making you not be in a state of like pure regulation essentially, which when we have stressors going on and when our body isn't flowing in the same way that it normally would, then other imbalances happen. So this is just like a really big missing piece here that I think is worth starting to look deeper into if you are someone who has autoimmunity. And then like Megan said, usually what we see is that some specific life event happens, maybe like a divorce, a car accident, that just triggers everything and then it all kind of spills out after that. And that's when it gets even tougher to start to heal and deal with it because you're already at the point where things are well over spilling out of the bucket, and it does become more difficult, but it doesn't mean that you can't heal. I mean, my gosh, we help so many people with that. Megan's been through that. It is possible to reverse or heal or whatever word that you would like to use.
Yeah, and by the way, this is well studied and documented. If you're not familiar, the Adverse Childhood Experiences test, the ACEs test, I mean, they've done a lot of studies on, by the way, particularly women. Women are, once again, like the last I heard of this, were 80% more likely to get an autoimmune disease than men. So let's, like, one, just throw that out there. Two, let's throw it out there. Like, we are not studied very much. Just like women are often not, especially like premenopausal women are really not studied a whole lot. It's just we're because there's a lot of variables because our hormones are change and shift on a day-to-day basis, which is, by the way, like normal. What is supposed to happen? That's like how our bodies work, and that's like a good thing, and we have to learn how to embrace that and how do we work with that. But that is a huge component. The other thing that is quite well studied, oh, and sorry, just to go back to the adverse childhood experiences, like they've shown that people with even, I think it's a 2 or higher as a score on that test, maybe we'll put a link to that test. So if you're
Yeah,
not
good
familiar with
idea.
it, you can go check it out. So yeah, if you score 2 or and above, even 10, 20 years later, like inflammatory markers are higher. Once again, like this is well studied and documented that like chronic inflammatory issues are more common in people who had adverse childhood experiences. And by the way, this isn't, this can be certainly like, my mom was an alcoholic. I didn't have a father in my life growing up. But it's also like, did you feel loved? Did you feel like you belonged? Those are also really important things. And that is a trauma to you as a child if you did not feel loved, if you did not feel like you belonged, whether or not that was technically, true or not. If that was true for you, that is an adverse childhood experience. And there are long-term things that can happen in your body as a result of that. The other thing that is really common is, one of the books that I read very early on when I got diagnosed was The Autoimmune Solution by, I believe it's by Dr. Amy Myers. And she talks about this. And this is where I first heard about the ACEs test. And this got me into like the trauma piece of healing, autoimmune diseases and just like overall our health. But my score, based on my score, like the likelihood I was going to get an autoimmune disease was off the charts. And once again, like reading that book, I was like, okay, well, of course I was going to get an autoimmune disease. Like, I've been dysregulated since I've been a small child. Like, that is just setting me up to develop an autoimmune disease at some point in my life. And the analogy that is often referenced when it comes to autoimmunity is like, you have all these things that load up the gun: trauma, toxicity, gut issues, like chronic stress. That could be like chronic antibiotic use as a kid. All of these things just add up, and then there's this whatever the trigger was that was pulled. But the gun was already loaded, and it was just this whatever event. Once again, like divorce, a death, just a stressful period of time in your life, getting sick, like getting COVID, like any of these things can be that trigger, and it doesn't have to be crazy. Once again, like mine was a minor fender bender that like threw my life up in the air in a way that I was like, like I was in a minor fender bender, like this was fine, but this was my trigger. And we've heard this so often being, whether it's big events or seemingly small events, were the trigger.
Yeah. Yeah, a pretty common thing here. And this is exactly why in I don't want this to come out as like a shame thing, because that's not what we're trying to do. But this is why we like to take the more of the root cause approach. Like we want to address all of those things that were being loaded in the gun before the trigger was pulled. And that's why like taking, medication for autoimmunity is not our favorite thing. I also understand that for some people there's a lot behind this. This is a lot to dig into. It is hard work. It's not comfortable work. You're going to probably stir up a lot of stuff, and not everyone is like ready to do that at this time in this moment. And that's where some of these other things, like, when we talk about like the healing diets, medication, even certain supplements, these are all, symptom management, band-aid fixes, essentially, to try and get you feeling better. Even like a really big thing in our community in the school that we went to is the AIP diet. And it was created like autoimmune paleo. It has autoimmune in the name. And yes, these things can be helpful, but again, it's like how far are you wanting to dive in and really get to the root issue? Because something like that, I don't think it's going to fully fix it. I don't think it's going to fully reverse it and heal it. It could keep you in a good place for a while, but as soon as you stop that, you would most likely go right back to the way you were before. In a lot of these diets and supplements, like this isn't meant to be like a lifestyle thing. Like no one should be AIP for the rest of their life. That is not how the diet is meant to work. And unfortunately, there are people who do that. So really, and again, it depends on where you're at and what you want to do, but we really try and stay away from these like symptom managing band-aid fixes.
Yeah, and I did, of course, I did AIP for too long, along with almost all of the other, diets, restrictive diets, quote unquote therapeutic diets. And yeah, I had this conversation yesterday, and it's like, yeah, if eating that way helps you feel better, great. If it causes more stress, don't do it. Like you already feel bad. Let's not add on more stress by, cutting out all of these things and being so focused on like, all right, these are like the 20 foods I can eat. And then how do I like do this combination? Like, and you can't live a life like you can't go out. You're going to develop significant food fears. Like you're going to start to self-isolate. For most people, this is what happens. Like you're going to start to self-isolate. You're going to stop going out. You're going to stop being able to like enjoy events with families and friends and all that kind of stuff. And guess what? Like more stress is going to make everything just worse. And so I think that that's just like really important to understand. Like the diets, while they can be beneficial sometimes temporarily while working on bigger root causes, more often than not, which is why we typically don't do them, and we are also trained in them if we need to implement them or support someone through them. They are a band-aid, and they're not going to heal you. They're not going to fix you. Carnivore diet is not going to fix all your inflammation issues and all of these things going on in your body. Yeah, it can help you feel better. And what life are you giving up in order to do that too? And I think that's just like really something important to think about. Where yes, food is medicine, and we can take it too far, just like with most other things.
Yeah, I mean, well said. It can definitely get to a point where, and you and I have both experienced this, and we also see a lot of clients, especially females, who deal with food fear and just the constant, because this is something that it's all around us, like whether or not it's a holistic diet, an AIP diet, a paleo diet, like whatever it is, the whole world is talking about the way that we should be eating to address certain things. And it is extremely overwhelming. Like, I mean, I remember being exactly in that state of like, I don't know like what to listen to anymore, implementing so many different things where my only option was like literally lettuce that I could eat. Like this is in that, and that's just not, none of that helps because it's creating so much stress on the body that you're essentially running yourself into the ground at that point. So really asking yourself like, what do I feel like I'm like forcing myself to do this? Does this feel good to me? Like when I eat this way, does it make me feel better? Or is it truly stressing me out more and I'm just doing it because I think I should be doing it? With the diet stuff, even with some of the supplement stuff as well. Like we talked about this before, but we definitely use supplements to help throughout the detoxing process. But this isn't really, we don't recommend supplements like unless you don't have a gallbladder or, a multivitamin. There's not a ton of supplements that we should be taking on a daily basis. Yes, there's like magnesium and some certain like nutrients that you may need, but for the most part, like I'm just going to say it, we don't need to be taking like berberine or whatever these other popular things are every single day of our lives. Like we're doing the same thing with supplements that we are doing with diet.
Yeah. Yeah. And, with the supplement stuff, like, once again, this is where I see so many people get it wrong, in our opinion, of just like, and once again, like, I don't want to throw these people under the bus because I'm sure there are good ones out there. Never heard of a good one. And I'm also positive they exist somewhere in the world. But naturopathic doctors, tend to symptom manage. And once again, like, really see this when we have people come to us with autoimmune diseases. Like, they're just trying to calm down the immune system, support whatever's being attacked. And that's like the long-term plan. Which is like mind blowing because you're doing the same thing as Western medicine and just like here's a bunch of band-aids. We're just doing it on a bigger scale, and it often tends to be more expensive because we're, let's just make a whole bunch of money off of supplements and let's run all of the testing and just and then micromanage and symptom manage with, oh, here you don't have enough of this in your gut. Oh, like we need to suppress your immune system. Oh, here's something to regulate your blood sugar. Oh, here's something to get your progesterone up. Like, yeah, but why is all of this happening in the first place? Shouldn't we look at that? And yes, it is harder because it takes a little bit more work. And for me, like if you're like we're so passionate about helping people heal, like we've been there, we know how bad you can feel and how lonely and isolating and just like terrible all of this stuff is. Like why would we not want to like look at the bigger picture and address that so we're not, I mean, supplement fatigue is a real thing. Like why you don't want to be taking like 10, 15, 20 supplements like for the rest of your life. Like one, just like the energy and focus to make sure you take all of those at the proper times, let alone actually like the financial side of things. Like, man, no, thank you. And if that's what if that is what you want to do, like that is totally fine. That is totally your choice. And for me personally, that is a hard no, thank you. I can take supplements for a short period of time, and then I want to be rolled done with and the handful of supplements that like the multivitamins. And yes, I do like magnesium. No, not everyone needs to take it, by the way. Looking at your blood work regularly, that's how you know what you actually need. But yeah, I can't imagine doing that and I mean we both did it for years and years, but to do that for the rest of my life, like absolutely not.
Yeah, and a big one when it comes to autoimmunity, a big supplement that we see and hear about is actually vitamin D. And we have some different opinions on this here. So, oftentimes people are high dosing vitamin D, and what this is actually doing is essentially like suppressing your immune system. Like it's covering things up, which is why you feel better when you're high dosing it. And as soon as you stop it, you're probably going to start to feel worse again because it's covering things up. And just as like a note here, just like Megan said, blood work, blood work, blood work. We want to look at things and get things checked. So many people are getting vitamin D wrong. So first of all, there's two markers, 25 OHD and 125 dihydroxy. The 125 dihydroxy is the true converted form, and that's the one that we never see ran on blood tests unless we're asking for it specifically. And sometimes they won't run it either. They'll probably just tell you that it's expensive to run. I truthfully don't actually think it's that expensive to run, not for us anyway. But the R ranges are 25 to 45. I don't know what the Western medicine range is off the top of my head. Do you?
I want to say it's 25 to 70. I might be wrong on that. I do feel like I just looked at this recently and that's close.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, but and it also kind of depends on the lab too, on what this range is going to be.
Yeah, so for the most part, 25 to 45 is what we're looking for. And I do see a lot of people who are well over that 45 limit who are taking like maybe 3,000 IUs of vitamin D a day, which is like insanely high. We do not need that much. And that can cause, you know, I will say too, I've seen people who maybe you're not taking that much and you still have elevated levels. Like when we see something high in the vitamin D range, it can indicate that there's inflammation happening in the body. So again, this supplement that is super popular, especially for all the viral issues that are going on right now, it might not be as good as we think it is.
Yeah, and this is, I mean, even if you look at a lot of like the big people, the big like medical doctors in the functional medicine space, I mean, 60 to 100 is not uncommon for ranges that they use, which, yeah, once again, this is mind blowing because like all the things that we do are based in research, by the way. Just like we're not like making this up. Like if you actually dig into the research and look at the physiology of like intaking vitamin D and how it's tested, the 25 OHD, which is the standard marker, and then all the things that have to happen in the kidneys, the other nutrients that are required, like all of that stuff that is then converted, but then it has to get into the cells. And if you're not, once again, like if you're not fully trained in blood work, and by the way, I'm seeing like this is super scary to me, and I have like minor panic attacks sometimes, like when I see these things come up. But in a lot of my fitness groups that I'm in, like a lot of my nutrition coaching, quote unquote, nutrition coaching groups that are supporting people for weight loss. I mean, they're given like sheets of like, hey, just input someone's labs in here, and it has like default ranges. And by the way, there's a big company out there who trains a lot of nutrition coaches who is doing this now, and I mean, terrifying. Even their coaches are not trained properly, and I just like I see some of the top people in their company, and I'm like, how many people are you going to hurt before like you actually learn the real like how this really works inside the body? Like, you clearly don't understand the physiology of vitamin D among like everything else. Like you can get hurt, and you can over supplement, and you can do some issue like kidney damage. You can like really deplete a lot of essential nutrients, which can cause a lot of other issues. You can mask certain issues with higher doses of vitamin D. So yeah, it can get pretty scary here. And a lot of times with people with autoimmunity is, our body's in like a danger response system, like a cell danger response mode is what we'll call it, which is just like there's a lot going on in your body, and your body's like super stressed, which means what will happen is when we run both of these vitamin D markers is 25 OHD standard vitamin D marker will be normal to low. The other one will be super high. And those should be at a 1-to-1 ratio. So they should be essentially the same, give or take a couple points. If one of them's 30, the other one's like 32, like you're fine. But if you see like 25 and then like 70, which by the way is not uncommon for us to see, that means you're getting enough vitamin D, you're converting it, and then it's just hanging out there. It's not actually being absorbed into the cells, which is the problem. And so the question is, okay, why is it not being absorbed? And once again, like how and why is this not being absorbed into the cells? Like what is blocking it? What is going on? Chronic viral issues, just like chronic inflammatory issues, like all of these things can inhibit that actual vitamin D marker from being absorbed into the cells. So that's like something super important to understand when it comes to vitamin D and just like autoimmune diseases in general.
Yeah, yeah. Vitamin D is a huge, huge thing. And I know it got even more popular when like COVID started to happen, and which kind of just ties into all of this in the suppression of the immune system and like people feeling better when they take it. And then when you stop it, you essentially crash and all the things. But is the blood work that you're talking about, is it the subscription thing that's going around right now? Okay.
No, it's an actual like coaching program run by someone very big in the health, fitness, weight
Okay.
loss space.
Okay.
I'll also say that the company was recently bought out by someone even bigger in this space. I'm just dropping hints. No, I'm not going to name the actual company. And yeah, I mean, they train a ton of nutrition coaches, which is terrifying to people like us. And once again, like I'm very much in that space. I do consults for people like coaches in that space, and there's a lot of corrections that I have to make. I mean, like, nope, what you learned is wrong. It was only like the partial piece. You didn't actually learn like the whole thing, which is understandable because it's takes a lot of time, a lot of effort. There's a lot of knowledge. Going through that full physiology like is a lot.
Yeah. Well, the reason I asked, I think we're talking about two separate things, and I can't say the name either, just because that's not right. I'm not going to do that. But so there's certain markers that we can use to identify autoimmunity. There is one in particular. It's called the ANA marker. it is not a specific diagnosis, but if it comes back elevated, like this is indication that something is not right in the body, but it's not giving us a specific diagnosis. With this certain new company that's out there, it's like a blood work subscription thing. Like you pay a pretty reasonable price for a decent amount of blood work, and I think you get blood work done like twice a year or something. It has this marker on it. This has come up like at least 7 or 8 times for people that I've talked with where they have a positive ANA on the test. And this company is telling these people that they have lupus. And that is not accurate. Like, that is not a direct marker for lupus. Huge problem. Like, that is very scary to me that that's what they're telling people. And, these people that I've talked to are now in panic, like reaching out to me, like, oh my God, I have lupus. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. Like this is not right. And that is terrifying because these are supposed to be like trained coaches who are giving you feedback on the blood work that you just had done, and that's not accurate. Now, granted, if this marker is elevated, yeah, something is definitely going on. Your body it may be some other autoimmune issue. I mean, like I said, this isn't a specific marker. There's tons of other things that can be going on underneath this. But again, like, we have to go back and piece things together and ask, like, this involves asking a lot of questions. Just like for reference, when we sign a client on, we spend an hour, try to keep it at an hour, asking so many detailed questions about like your life, testing, history, just like everything, because there's so many questions that have to be asked in order to like put the pieces of the puzzle together. So having someone do all of this blood work, give you an idea of what they think is happening without talking to you at all, without asking any direct questions, asking about your lifestyle habits, your diet. That is like mind-boggling and very scary to me. So I'm sure some people will know the testing that I'm talking about. And again, like, I'm here to tell you, you need to go a lot deeper than that if that's what someone is telling you. And even if it is positive, we have to figure out what is going on underneath it. What are the root issues that are causing your body to be like so flared and in that cell danger response, essentially.
Yeah, and if you ever have a consult with us and you send us labs beforehand, we don't go over those until we get a little bit more background information because it matters so much. Like the background, the history, like someone's story, like all of that matters and really is important for us to put all of the pieces together to understand big picture what is going on so that we know how to properly start supporting someone in their health and their healing journey. So yeah, it's terrifying. And by the way, you don't have to have a positive ANA to have an autoimmune disease. The ANA can also flip-flop. It can come back positive, then come back negative, positive, negative, positive, negative. Like that is not uncommon either. So yeah, it's like a real blanket, and there's a handful of autoimmune diseases it can reference, and yes, it's an indication that something's going on. And what the question is, what is going on? It's just like like CRP. Like CRP is an inflammatory marker. Okay, but why? Like, well, what is going on? What is triggering the inflammation? Like, why is that coming back high? These are things that, no offense, chat GDP or any of these like AI services and, just blanket like, all right, here's the reading of your blood work and this is what it means and here's what you should do. Like, oh, that's not even like with any of the functional lab testing that we've run, like we require backstories, like we need to talk to someone first so we get a better idea of like what's actually going on.
I've had that happen. Actually, recently, someone input their blood work into Chat GPT, and I was like, okay, let's take a pause for a second. Yes, they're not like 100% wrong about specific markers. However, they're not being taught like the patterns that we're looking for and the imbalances and all the other things. So yeah, that, can be a great tool for certain things, but I don't know that I would recommend using that for like health related blood work stuff. Probably not the best idea.
No, and once again, like if you're in a pretty good spot and you're like, I'm just curious for another opinion because I feel pretty darn good. And just, is there anything maybe small that I could tweak that could be a little bit better? For sure. Like, AI could probably help you out with that. But if you are chronically ill and have all of these different symptoms that are coming up for you, like, no offense, but I don't know if an AI service can do what we do, and how we put things together and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, just got to be careful. There's definitely a time and a place for it.
Yeah.
So we mentioned the ANA marker, and I mean, when for autoimmunity, there's like Megan was saying, there's tons of different autoimmunities out there. Some of them don't even have names. The most specific ones that we see are autoimmunity of the thyroid. That's like really common for us to see and work with. And we wanted to talk about those markers and just talk a little bit more about them. So TPO-AB, which is thyroid peroxidase antibody, super common with Hashimoto's. Let me back up a little bit and say it can be hard to get some of these tests run. They're not always willing to run them. Like when we go in and we say, hey, I think something's going on with my hormones, my thyroid, let me get some testing. You're probably just going to get very, very basic like hormone markers and not these specific antibodies, which would actually let you know like kind of where you're at on the spectrum here. So these might be a little bit more difficult to ask for, but there's certainly some people out there, including us, who are willing to run them. But these are what we need to see if you are actually like, you know, over the point and have autoimmunity. So we can't diagnose or technically to like treat disease, but these are the things that can be helpful when trying to identify if you actually have an autoimmune disorder, specifically of the thyroid. So TPO-AB, that one is very, very common. A not so common one is TGAB. I always mispronounce this word. Thyroid thyroglobulin.
Yes.
It's the globulin part that gets me. So oftentimes we're only going to get one of these, and it's probably going to be TPO-AB that we see. And if that comes back, you know, not elevated, it's not uncommon to hear someone say, oh, you're good, like you don't have any autoimmunity issues going on, when really we have this other marker, the TGAB, that we haven't ran yet. And some people might only have that one elevated. So it is important to see both of them. And then we have TSI, which is thyroid stimulating immunoglobulin. That is most commonly run for Graves' disease or like, you know, hyperthyroid issues. I would say the same thing for that. I have not seen that a lot. People coming in and actually having that test. It's something where like if we want to run it, we will run it. But again, I think some of these can be hard to order sometimes.
Yeah, I've only seen TSI run once
Yeah,
in
that's
my
what.
entire tenure. Yeah.
Yeah,
Which is once again like super mind blowing. And here's the reason why. Once again, like Western medicine does have a reason why, because of how they're trained. Because once again, here's the thing. If you have an autoimmune disease, something is being attacked. And Western medicine says, okay, only when something is attacked enough that it's failing do we support, because that we have a pill for that.
makes me
Which
sad.
I mean, it's incredibly sad. And it's also, you know, like especially for thyroid autoimmunity, and the a couple other ones, like we do get lupus, like you see different like forms of colitis are not uncommon for us. I've worked with a handful of others too. We also find autoimmune patterns, which we'll talk about here too, in quite a few people. That is actually pretty common for us to find, and it's usually for earlier stage autoimmunity that we'll start to see this pattern before someone's like officially diagnosed with it. Um, but yeah, you know, like once again, it's like if you have hypothyroidism, they're going to support the thyroid, and typically you're going to be put on either Synthroid or levothyroxine, which is supporting T4, which once again, like Western medicine is missing the whole boat of like the conversion of T4 to T3. TSH is actually like a brain thing, versus like a thyroid thing. And, you know, plus we have the immune system thing, but they have their pill. And that's the same thing. Even if you have Hashimoto's, they're going to give you the same pill because it's your thyroid that's being attacked. So they're like, all right, well, let's support the thyroid. And then also, by the way, once you have one autoimmune disease, the likelihood of you developing a second, a third, a fourth goes up pretty significantly. So, once again, like just supporting the thing that's being attacked itself, little dangerous sometimes because then you are putting yourself at risk for developing other ones as well. And then it's like, okay, here's another pill for this. For RA is another really big one
Oh yeah.
that I see. But it's like, okay, well, let's give you something to like manage a pain. But it's like, once again, it's the immune system that is attacking something. And the question is, well, why is the immune system attacking something to begin with? And if we're not addressing any of that, like, of course, our body's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse oftentimes. And I'm also in like a bunch of different autoimmune groups because I just, I get curious about what's going on in the community. And they were helpful, mildly helpful in early stages when I got first diagnosed. And yeah, I mean, people are like, oh, just do this diet, just do this diet. And once again, like, try this med, and then once you start adding in the meds, then you have all the side effects from the meds, and then you got to take a medicine to manage the side effect of this med, and it's like a whole.
Yeah. And again, like this is just how those doctors are trained. Like it's nothing personal, not against them. It's not an attack. It's just like this is literally the way that they were trained to do their jobs and to help people. And we're trying to bring to light this different approach that we have actually found not only helpful for ourselves, but for tons of clients at this point. So, yeah, just trying to share it and spread the word and let people know that we can kind of catch some of these things before they're already at their worst. And what Megan was starting to say is that there's actually a pattern that we can see in your labs on a CBC with differential. They don't always run the differential part. You can ask for it. They might be willing to do it, but this is the part that gives us like the insight onto what other issues may be going on in the gut, what's going on in your immune system. So between your neutrophils and your lymphocytes, we can see a pattern of trending autoimmunity. And from my experience, when I have seen this, people aren't coming in with these diagnoses yet. Maybe sometimes they're thinking that they're heading in that direction, but they haven't actually been diagnosed. So this is where we can see it when your lymphocytes are trending higher than your neutrophils. This is a pattern that autoimmunity is kind of like creeping in, setting in on its way, and there's definitely an imbalance that's happening in the body. For us, our lymphocyte ranges are 30 to 37, and neutrophils are 50 to 60. So when those lymphocytes start to trend, like I'll say more than mildly upward, because if it's just a slight inverse, we can suspect there might be some viral issues going on. But it's when it's really starting to trend over, then yeah, we are definitely getting suspicious of where your body's at, how stressed out it is, and that there might be some autoimmunity present.
Yeah, and those are percentages, by the way.
Yes.
If you're outside of the US, oftentimes you do not get percentages. You can do the percentages yourself, but they'll run, the actual like standard values, and you'll actually like get a number. So yeah, and I think like also going off of this, the other really big thing I see even in the holistic health space when it comes to autoimmunity is an overemphasis, in our opinion, on gut health. And yes, yes, the gut plays a big role, especially because about 70% of our immune system is in our gut. And there are also so many things that impact our gut health that, something like a stool test isn't going to show us. Like just balancing your gut bacteria, because really the big things that the stool testing is looking for, not great for yeast and fungal issues, not great for parasite overload or parasite issues. Really, it's just looking at the bacteria. And even still, like it's a moment in time that you're getting because it's oftentimes one stool sample. If you're super lucky, you can get a three-day stool test sample kit. And once again, like it's only good for a certain number of things. And it's like, okay, but what else is impacting the gut? Like if your nervous system is dysregulated, your gut's never going to be in a good spot. Like if you don't
Mhm.
have enough stomach acid production for whatever reason, that could be stress, that could be nutrient deficiencies, like whatever it is, it could be an H. pylori infection, like you're never going to have good gut health. If you don't produce enough bile in your liver and then have a gallbladder to store it in, like, and you're not supporting your body with that, like, you're never going to have good gut health. Like, if you have mold in your body, your gut's never going to be in a good spot. Like, arguably, even like with toxin overload issues, like, you could do all of the gut work. And if you have like high levels of heavy metals of any sort, like, your gut health is never going to be good because all of these things are feeding all of the good and the bad stuff, particularly the bad stuff, in your gut. And so this is like a big thing when we talk about like when I did the gut health masterclass, like, yes, the gut is super important. And let's look at the gut. Let's balance the gut. Let's make sure like we kill the bad stuff, get the good stuff. And there's also like so many other things that impact the gut that if we don't look at that, I mean, this is why people go on like all of these SIBO protocols, like Candida protocols, like all of these things, and they never see long-lasting results because they're not, once again, like not looking at the bigger picture. And once again, this isn't necessarily to blame practitioners all the time because that's how they were trained. That's how we were trained originally. And we also, like we've learned oftentimes the hard way of like, there's so many other things that also impact the gut. And if we don't look at those, you're probably never going to heal.
Yeah. And I never, yeah, I mean, we did learn the hard way. That's why we're here sharing it with you so you hopefully
Yeah.
don't have to learn it the hard way. I mean, no, literally though, like spent years upon years trying to figure out like just like why do we feel so awful all the time? Why do I constantly have GI issues after I've done like several SIBO and yeast protocols and all the things? Yeah, it's like, and I feel like right now mold is becoming something that people are starting to get it. We're getting that like it's not really okay to just like suck it up and live in mold, or maybe not do any detox work around it. I don't think we're quite there yet, but we're getting there. It's I would like to say that it's like trending right now, and this is one of those trends that I'm actually happy about because I do want people to understand that like mold is a big deal. And just like we had started this conversation with, like, autoimmunity is, we see it more in women. The statistic, I think you said 80%. Think about these two things combined. Like, females are naturally more sensitive in a good way, like more intuitive. We're impacted by things more easily than men are. Like, and it's kind of partially because these things have been ingrained in us too, like to kind of let things go, to say no, to be passive and whatnot. Whereas like with men, it's very, like it's okay to say like no and shut it down. And that's actually a healthier way to be because you're not going to take on so much. And there's a delicate balance between the both of them, but like, so example, if you're living in a house and you're being exposed to mold and like no one else in your household is getting sick but you are, and you're the female and now you have autoimmunity issues, like there's just really common things that are happening out there. And I am glad that more people are starting to get on board with like the mold stuff and even like the heavy metal stuff. I mean, the generation before us, kind of like the boomer generation, a lot of them have amalgam fillings in their mouth, which is mercury. That is a heavy metal that is leaching into your body daily if it's in your mouth, and it is a big deal. So like in people aren't always talking about that as well. Like with the SIBO stuff and the yeast stuff, like I saw so many different practitioners. I worked at a clinic that this is like what they did. We constantly gave out like SIBO diets and different like, diets for ways for people to eat to help heal like yeast and fungal issues. None of it worked. All these people kept coming back. We kept selling them supplements, and we weren't asking these questions. We weren't asking about mold. We weren't asking about parasites. We certainly were not asking people if they had amalgam fillings in their mouth. Like they're such big issues that do need to be talked about that really are at the root of a lot of what we're talking about today.
Yeah, and I am glad about the mold stuff. And at the same time, you know, by the way, all of us have spent a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of money to be more well versed in the mold side of things. And it is hard, like people buy certain tests, and I'm like, I know you spent two, three, four, five, six, $800 on a test, and like it's not very accurate. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
sorry.
Very
Like
true.
I super apologize, and that is the reality of the situation. Like I know this test came back and it said negative, and I'm like, but it's not accurate. Like a big one is, and like, by the way, yes, it is in our functional lab store. I do want to acknowledge that, and remember, we always say please have a consult with us before you order any sort of lab testing. But the mycotoxin test from Mosaic is not super accurate. Like, it is very unfortunate, and the test that is way more accurate is the one from Vibrant Wellness. It is like $200 more, and it tests for like 11 or 13 more strands of mold. It's also more sensitive. You don't have to provoke with it, which provoking is like a whole other thing. That's a whole other topic. Join the mold webinar if you want to learn about provoking and other testing options and the best testing options so you don't waste money. But now we're also seeing like a surge of practitioners who are not super well versed ordering tests and telling people things that aren't true. And I see that a lot with the organic acids test of like people like, yeah, they ran an organic acids test. It was the one from Mosaic or Formulate Great Plains, like which is the gold standard when it comes to organic acids test. And then they didn't know how to read it right because they are just looking at the notes down below because that's how they were trained. Just like look at the notes below, look at all the suggestions. Once again, like you got to look at the bigger picture and put all of these pieces together. And I've apologized to many people being like, look, I'm really sorry that you spent so much money with this person and they read your test wrong.
Yeah.
Because and it's not necessarily their fault. They just didn't know. And they didn't know how to read this right. So it's a really big thing. And which is why it's really important to vet the person that you're working with, to like ask a bunch of questions, interview several, and just ask a lot of questions. And this is where once again, like education is power, which is a huge reason why we do this podcast to give people more education so they can have more power in their corner to come in and ask better questions.
Yeah. Yeah. And you do need to ask some, if you want to find the right practitioner who is going to heal the root issue, these are questions that have to be asked, especially, like we're talking about autoimmunity. If you're someone who has an autoimmune disease and you do end up in the hands of some type of holistic doctor practitioner that is just like giving you supplements as symptom management to band-aid things, like I encourage you to focus in on how it feels to you as well, because the more that we do that and learn how to trust that sensation, like you will get guided in the right direction. I mean, I remember feeling like that all the time, like since I had issues since I was a child, and seriously remember feeling like none of this is right. Like I feel like I'm missing this huge root issue like all throughout my time frame. And yes, I know that that's like a learned thing and it takes time to get there, but it's also really important to just like advocate for yourself and ask questions and don't let people push things on you. Like if someone's telling you you need to do this, this and this and take all these supplements and you're sitting there like, in fear and uncomfortable and just saying yes, like that's not right. That's not the right way to heal. You have to learn to kind of like speak up for yourself and just ask the right questions as well. And we really do hope that you can take a lot of like these root issues that we're talking about and ask questions about them, because sometimes too, like, maybe you mentioned like I might have mold toxicity. I lived in mold for a couple years. If someone dismisses that or they don't know about mold, you would hope that they would say that so you can get guided to like the right type of care.
Yeah, and by the way, practitioners are not perfect. We are people
Yes.
too, and many of us can be guided by our own fear and shame. And, I've worked with a lot of business coaches out there, and a lot of business coaches are still, especially men, no offense to them, because I've worked with many male coaches and I've had some good ones and not so good ones. And the way that men sometimes can be really pushy with their sales, like, can make you feel very scared, and you're already scared when like, if you're diagnosed with an autoimmune condition, you're like, I'm already scared and I'm desperate to find something that works. And I get it. Like, I get that feel, like I've been there. And the more you cannot come at a situation from that kind of like fear and desperation, which I know is really challenging, just by the way, the more likely you are going to be guided to the right protocol and right way of being supported and supporting your own body kind of through this whole process. I have one other thing I would like to cover.
Yeah.
I just kind of want to go back to the nervous system regulation piece because, by the way,
Mm.
like, once again, like, this is such a big piece of autoimmune diseases. Once again, especially in women. And once again, this book, The Autoimmune Solution, like, really changed my perspective on this because I was like, well, I've already, like, I was in therapy for a decade, and I had been on meds and all that kind of stuff. And in this book, she sheds some light into understanding, like, we're holding this trauma inside of our body and we're holding these patterns inside of our brain. And if we don't look at both of those things and we're just talking about them, we're probably not going to get anywhere. And yes, I think therapy is great and has a time and a place and is super valuable. I'm not discounting that. And trauma therapy is real different, and the things that the strategies, the tools, and my old neighbor and friend was a trauma therapist, and we had many conversations about this, which were super. It was great to hear her perspective on all of this and the difference between like cognitive behavioral therapy and talk therapy versus like trauma therapy. She also incorporated EMDR. She was a like EMDR specialist and a trained other practitioner. Like, was the real deal. So it's really different, and there's different ways of therapy or therapy adjacent things to help regulate our nervous system and start to shift some of these patterns, which you hear us talk about quite a bit. We talk about like somatic kind of therapy, like, how do we get this trauma out of our body, how do we release the emotions from our body. And then there's a lot of ways to do like more of the cognitive stuff, and by the way, there's more than just somatic work to get things out of your body too. If we think about breath work, and for me, like, I started with hypnotherapy and then got into energy healing and different things like that. And she lists like a variety of things in her book, which is like what got me kind of thinking. And I was like, all right, hypnotherapy sounds reasonable. I feel like I can do that. It was definitely not the right option for me at that time, which is fine because I learned that and I learned why, and it led me into energy healing, which was a huge game changer to me, and that also led me into the psychedelic kind of space, which obviously is completely life changing. But we need a little bit more for thinking about regulating our nervous system, like healing trauma, more than just talk therapy often, because we can't just talk through these things. They're stored in our bodies. They're also super ingrained. These patterns are ingrained in our brain. And so the question is, how do we start to shift both of those things? And you can start with one or the other, depending on the person. You can do both at the same time too. It can be a lot for some people, but I think that's an important distinction too when I think about like the trauma and nervous system regulation piece of, oftentimes talk therapy is just not going to quite cut it, and we may need to look for some other things to start to work a little bit deeper into these aspects.
Yeah. Yeah. So glad you mentioned that. And honestly, this is like something that, if you do have an autoimmune issue and you're listening to this, that's a piece that you can start to work on yourself, like, before anything. And quite honestly, it is very helpful when we can start to address that first, because there's going to be so many things that come up along the way. Like if we are doing detox work with this, I have had clients who like came in, they've already started EMDR therapy. They already know like the somatic way, the how to release some of the energy from their body, and huge difference when we already have that in place. So that is something that, I would recommend starting with that whenever you can.
Yeah, and once again, like start with like 1 to 5 minutes. There are so many YouTube videos that are completely free. Breath work is a great way. You can start with some real gentle somatic type work, trauma releasing exercises. Like all of these things can be done by yourself. Yes, I do think there's a lot of power in doing it with someone else too, and it's free. And it,
Hmm.
you know, 5 minutes a day, less than 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, like, is that worth it to start to improve your physical health, mental and emotional health, like how you're showing up for yourself, how you're showing up at work, how you're showing up for your family, how you're showing up for your friends? Like, for me, there's no question, like 100%, of course it's worth it. And, some people choose not to, and that's okay too. And if you do want to heal, probably gonna have to look at that at some point.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of like it's like a base recommendation for something that you could start on if you have an autoimmune issue, the nervous system regulation, and then looking at your diet as well and just trying to make shift towards more like whole, real foods. You try and cut back on like processed things, processed sugar. I will say, as much as we are not big fans of restricted diets, if you are like full blown autoimmunity, it can be helpful to eliminate gluten and dairy if it doesn't need to be every single person, but I have seen it be helpful just because those can be extra stressors on the body. Doesn't need to be a forever thing for everyone. Some people it does just because they feel better, but that is one thing, like diet wise, that we have seen make a difference for some people.
Yeah, for sure. Anything more quote unquote anti-inflammatory, which just if you minimize processed food, prioritize protein, get good veggies in, don't go too low carb, like where are your carbohydrates coming from? And yeah, for sure, like gluten and dairy for many people with autoimmune diseases can be very beneficial. Like pick one. If you're like brand new, like shifting just towards whole foods first is a real good strategy and
Yes.
usually a little bit easier. And then maybe, cut out dairy for a month and then reintroduce it slowly. See how you feel. Now, don't go from like no dairy to a bucket of ice cream. Uh, Not a great strategy to check to see if you're dairy intolerant because probably not going to go super well. But doing a little bit of reintroduction of these things and doing them one at a time can be a lot easier. Especially if you're new. Gluten can be very challenging at first. Once again, we do have a free resource, the ultimate guide to going gluten free. It is completely free. It is in our free resources. I will put a link below. But it's everything. I put this together after I had been gluten free for many years, and it was like everything I wish I knew when I first went gluten free to make it a little bit easier. So yeah,
Yeah.
we've got all kinds of free tools and resources if you need them.
Yes, we do. Yeah, and that handout's really helpful, but choosing one of those things is
Yeah.
a good place to start and ultimately just like trying to make the shift towards more real food, higher protein intake, not skipping meals, getting enough water in, adding a pinch of sea salt to your water to maybe get some extra minerals in there. Like those are pretty basic things that anyone can start with in addition to the nervous system regulation.
Yeah. And walking. Walk
Yes.
outside, be mindful because when you do have an autoimmune disease, your body's under a lot of stress. So, hit workouts, intense workouts of any sort, probably not going to feel super good. And I know the weight piece can be a big thing for many people with autoimmune diseases, especially I feel you with the Hashimoto's people. Like, it can be a real struggle. And trying to over exercise your way into a quote unquote healthier weight is not the way to go. And if you tested this, you probably gained some weight if you tried that. So, if you're not doing a lot, just like going out walking outside, like 5 or 10 minutes a day as a starting point, like super good, super beneficial for everyone.
Yes, yeah, walking is something that's good for everyone. Definitely. I know that's a really tough thing too. I see a lot of people who are into the intense workouts when our body is like already stressed out. And that's probably one of the hardest things to back off on because there can be like some fear around it, some body image stuff. But yeah, in general, like walking, natural sunlight, these simple diet and lifestyle changes are truly a great place to start. And we can even see shifts just from doing things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Anything else you wanted to talk about autoimmune related?
I think we covered it all.
Okay, great. I think kind of the last like little thing I'll just say is I know it can be really scary when you get a diagnosis, or if something's running in your family, there can be this like fear and panic that you're also going to get it. Also say like being diagnosed with an autoimmune disease is not a death sentence. It does not mean you're destined to feel like garbage for the rest of your entire life. Like there are many, many things that we can do. If you need to start medication, that is fine. And it's probably not going to fix everything. Just, a heads up. And when we do start doing some of the bigger work, some people can come off meds, some people can't. It kind of depends on the situation, how long we've been on the meds, what is the dosage, what is the state of our body kind of coming into this. All of that matters. And even still, even if you do have to stay on meds for the rest of your life, like there are so many ways that you can feel better, and it's not a death sentence. Like you don't have to feel awful for the rest of your life. So just want to throw that out there, that it's not, you don't have to feel like garbage for your entire life just because you have this autoimmune disease. So yeah, thank you for joining. As always, please like, follow, subscribe. If it resonates, 5-star reviews really mean the world to us. Thank you for joining, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for listening.